You're up in the sky, I'll carry you home, home to the mountaineers. And soon, my friend, you'll see them again, the ones you left behind. And I'll sing for you all the way home.
Learning Japanese was perhaps the most pivotal and influential decision I've made in my life so far. It's the language that I went the deepest into, it's the language that I've done the most things with, and I would say it's also the language I've lived the most numerous, the deepest, and the richest life experiences through. Japan is also one of the only places I have truly felt at home, just surrounded by love and friendship with some of the kindest, most caring people I've met in my life so far. But despite all of this and having a YouTube channel where for 7 years I've been sharing as much as I can about language learning and also my personal stories with languages, I've barely talked about Japanese ever since that first short documentary I made all those years ago. Have any of you ever wondered why not? Well, it's finally time. 7 years after leaving Japan and basically completely stopping my studies of Japanese and even speaking the language, I'm finally getting back to it. So in this video, I am going to be speaking Japanese for the first time in years, and we'll see how bad it has gotten, which, to be honest, is pretty terrifying. But first, I thought this would be a really good opportunity to finally tell you that untold story of why possibly the most special foreign language I have learned has been basically missing from this channel for all these years, and why getting back to Japanese today is such a meaningful, special, and positive thing to me. So growing up, I did not do well in school, which looking back was probably mostly because I didn't think I was clever. But after starting university, I had this huge dream of going to live in Japan. I was just so enamored by this idea of going to live within a culture that was so different than my own. But in particular, I just loved this idea of becoming able, hopefully, to understand the people in that culture, but also get to a point where I could be understood as well. And so the Japanese language in the beginning was just a necessary vehicle for my dream, but that was kind of a problem because of all the things I did badly in at school, languages were probably my worst subject. So I decided if I was gonna have any chance of achieving this dream, I basically just had to study like crazy. And what happened next was just kind of unbelievable to me. So I quickly began to excel, and before long I was just way ahead of the other students in my class. And it got to a point where before too long I was so far ahead that people started thinking I was gifted with languages and things like that, which was super weird for me at the time. But the reason why that experience was so influential in my life, it's not because it showed me that I was gifted or special, it's that it simply showed me I was no different, that I was capable of learning these hard things too. I just had to work really, really hard. But the important thing was that I could do it if I just used that tool. And to be honest, if it weren't for that experience learning Japanese, where I did eventually become pretty proficient before even going to Japan, I don't think I would have believed in myself enough to learn the 7 other foreign languages that I've studied since then to varying levels of fluency. And I definitely don't think I would have believed in myself enough to become a software engineer later on, or a number of things I've done. And so this experience with Japanese just completely changed the trajectory of my life from that single perspective. So when I got to Japan, I first lived in Fukuoka, and as I mentioned, I had actually become pretty fluent before even going, but my emphasis had not necessarily even been on just speaking the language. It was really on what I like to think of as cultural literacy. And honestly, the most magical experience just unfolded. So I got to know so many people in Fukuoka, including like the owners of a little bento shop. And before long, I was calling the owner Oba-chan. She was the sweetest person. Her husband was in the back, and they would literally look forward to seeing me every day. I would come by on my way home from work, and they would just want to know everything. How did my day go? And it was just, it was the most beautiful little ritual that frankly, it was like straight out of a dream. But I also ended up with these two different groups of friends who I became really, really close with. They were just so kind to me, honestly, and we did so many things together. And I got so close with one of them that she actually invited me to live in her apartment with her and her partner, and that's where I lived for the rest of my time in Fukuoka. I can honestly say that that was the happiest time of my life so far, and it's thanks to each of those people who accepted me and brought me into their world. That's when things went really wrong, and I'll keep this part short. But basically, it was then time for me to move to Kyoto, where I was supposed to be studying abroad for 1 whole year. And you know, this was supposed to be the most magical, amazing year studying in Kyoto. I actually specifically waited an extra year to go to Japan because I wanted to go to Doshisha University, and they had like a bunch of really high requirements to go there. And I'd been dreaming about this like every day, every night for 3 years through, to be honest, a really challenging university experience. My second year of university, I was basically homeless the entire year. My third year, I found out that I had cancer. And so went through a whole bunch of really challenging things. And it was this dream of going to study abroad in Japan for a full year. You know, that's what got me through university. And I'm honestly not sure if I would have gotten through those things if it weren't for that dream. That singular thing just drove me so much. But despite my very best efforts, unfortunately, like many other times in my life, I just didn't have enough money. Studying abroad is expensive, especially somewhere like Japan. And yeah, despite everything I tried, I just didn't have enough. I was working in Fukuoka as an interpreter. That's why I was actually there. But I got paid such a small salary that I actually lost money by being there. So I went to Kyoto with even less than I came with. And I found out last minute that I was ineligible for most of the scholarships that I was potentially going to be getting because I was not a US citizen. And that's basically it. I got there, and from the first moment, you know, I tried so hard to hang on. I ate like twice a day, sometimes less. I didn't do any sightseeing really, but after just 5 months, I had nothing left. Basically, that was it. I had to go back to the US where I was finishing university, and yeah, my Japan experience was cut 7 months short. But to be honest, the whole experience in Kyoto was not much of an experience compared to what I expected or what I hoped for. I did meet a couple of wonderful Japanese people there, and also a couple of other international students who I'm still friends with today. I had a couple of fantastic experiences. Like I became a barista in a cafe, like a Japanese barista. That was an amazing experience, and one of the hardest things I've ever done, to be honest. It was very challenging. But the fact is, those 5 months were a little bit tragic just because I could see things coming to an end. And yeah, that's what happened. And that's basically why I stopped studying and even really speaking Japanese. Honestly, I was just so heartbroken that things fell apart and that I didn't get to have that experience I felt like I had just been working so hard for. And, you know, it was like I was surrounded by all these other international students in Kyoto who seemed to be just having the time of their life, you know, and after missing out on almost everything that they were doing, and I couldn't even go out with my Japanese friends or my coworkers because, People want to go to like izakayas and eat food and drink, and I just couldn't afford it. And then overnight, I found myself back in North Carolina, living in the back of a broken down car, finishing my degree. I just never got over it, and it took me several years, honestly, to even slightly get past this. It just wouldn't leave my mind. And unfortunately, speaking Japanese just reminded me of that. And so unfortunately, obviously, since I wasn't speaking Japanese or studying Japanese, I also lost contact with the friends I had in Japan as well. And so, it's time to move on. It's been 7 long years, and languages have ended up being a truly central part of my life, of course, my work, and I've gone on to learn 7 other foreign languages to varying levels of fluency. But yeah, I miss Japanese so much. I miss everything that it meant to me, everything that it gave me. I miss Japanese people. It's such a beautiful culture that resonates so deeply with me personally. And it really became a big part of who I am. It's hard to describe, but there have just been so many times since leaving Japan where I miss that. It's a part of who I am now. And I've been neglecting that for a long time. And so I told you that story today because I want to express that as I now go forward, as I document my journey getting back into Japanese, just like I documented my journey learning Mandarin Chinese and all kinds of other stuff, this one is really going to be special, and it's about so much more than just learning a language. For me, this is about moving on, it's about healing, and it's about finally living the language that I worked so hard to learn, and that truly did change my life. じゃあ、今はね、なんかちょっと日本語を話すわ。これはちょっと変な感じだよね。何年間後、また日本語を話すって、ちょっと変な感じだね。でも、ものすごく懐かしいよ、これ。この感じはね、これみたいね、なんかすごくいい友達がいて、すごく親しい友達がいて、なんか毎日毎日すべて一緒にしてから、いつか、なぜかわかんないけど、でもその友達見ない。ね、急にその人また見ない。それからなんか何年間後、7年間後、また急にその友達出会う。ね、なんかちょっと変な感じだよね。なんかものすごく懐かしくて、嬉しくていいけどね、なんか何を言うか知らないね。しかも今ちょっと緊張してるよ。なんか単語はいっぱい忘れちゃったかな。確かに忘れちゃったな。これでいいか。言った通り、今日からやっとまた日本語を勉強する予定ですね。だから、いいか。ごめんね、何を言うか分かんないよ。今日はこの話を聞いてみんなありがとうございます。じゃあね。